We have a really fascinating presentation this morning. It's titled 3 Ways That SisterLand Farms is Growing with Port Angeles. And one of the founders of SisterLand Farms, Jenson, is going to present it. Jenson is a non-binary farmer who founded SisterLand after moving to Port Angeles in 2018. Since then, they've won 3 Farmer of the Year awards, launched the county's only kitchen waste compost program, and have been invited to present at statewide agricultural conferences on issues such as regenerative farming, collectivization of land and resources, and equity in agriculture. They founded the Clallam Growers Collective, served as vice chair of the county's Solid Waste Advisory Committee and the city's farmers market, and started a nonprofit project that aims to create pathways to sustainable education and programming in Port Angeles, which is called the Wagon Wheel Fund. And so, Jenson, if you'd like to come up, we'd sure like to hear all about this.
Thanks for having me. This is working. Okay. Perfect. All right, so to get us started, my background was actually at Kansas State University. I'm from Tennessee. I went to Kansas State to study international agricultural economics and veterinary medicine. I had this ambition of working probably in East Africa on borderland territories between livestock breeding operations and national parks. I landed quite a ways away from there, but I am kind of hilariously still a farmer working on borderlands between agricultural land and a national park. Life's funny like that. Okay, so SisterLand is very, very different just whatever. We do a lot of things in very, very unconventional ways. So we have a farm crew. Typically, let me back up a little bit. Typically, independent farmers, they make their livings by drawing their wages or their salaries from whatever revenue they make as a farmer. A lot of times this is under the table. A lot of times it's just cash in hand. So back in 2019, I started surveying farmers here to see what they were actually earning, and farm crew as well. And it turns out, with 1 or 2 exceptions, almost all farm owners were not getting paid. And if they were getting paid, it was something gross along the lines of about $3 an hour. And so these are people who are obviously very, very important in our community. They're making it work. Some of them own land, which means that they can continue farming even if they're not drawing significant dividends. But they are living in poverty and they aren't supported. The low cost of food in America is one of the major issues, and I could get into that and talk about that for an hour, but I'm not going to. So SisterLand created a system wherein we pay each other equally and nobody draws dividends. So no matter how large our crew gets, everybody gets the exact same hourly rate. It doesn't matter if I hire a 19-year-old fresh out of high school who's interested in becoming a farmer and knows nothing about it, all the way up to the ownership and our accountants. Everybody gets the same hourly rate. So if somebody wants a raise, we have to lift all of the boats. So that's very, very unconventional. And another thing that we do is we have annual town hall meetings where everybody who's a part of our farm, if you volunteer for the nonprofit, if you work on the farm, or if you are a subscriber to our CSA or our compost operation, you get to vote on what we do. You know how much we earn. You get to look at our annual budget. You get to look at our next year's projections, the things that we want to grow and the projects we want to start. And you get to tell us what you think as investors we should do with our time and our resources. So these are 2 ways that we're trying to democratize farming in Port Angeles, Washington, but that's just our own little operation. SisterLand itself is also doing lots of really cool things. And that leads me to this beautiful Venn diagram I've created just for you. All right. So the 3 categories I would like to talk about today are: we're meeting local needs as they arise, we're giving everything that we can, and we're diverting waste. All right, next slide. how are we meeting local needs? We're creating jobs. SisterLand right now has 6 employees. We are a 1-acre farm. So the farm where I trained just outside of Washington, D.C. was a 300-acre farm with about 27 to 30 acres in active vegetable production and the rest in livestock. And we had 6 employees. So compare that to SisterLand. We've got a lot of boots on the ground for how little space we have and what few resources we have. And that's because we try to be zero profit. Our ambition is that whatever revenue we bring in goes directly to employing more people who want to do this work and learn to do this work. And we want to keep pouring revenue into wages until everybody at the farm is making the living wage standard. We're not there yet. We get closer every year. We are also creating a community space. We do this by hosting free events. We have this summer camp for adults that we do every year, which is always a hit. But we're also trying to cultivate this space where people can be unabashedly and bravely themselves and then protect them in that space. So we're also the hosts of the annual Pride Picnic, so that folks who are part of the LGBTQ community have a safe space to go during the month of June and are celebrated. We're building networks. A lot of this you can see in action during events like summer camp or Pride, but we have folks in the Port Angeles community who are now expecting their first child after meeting at an event at SisterLand. So we've only been around for 5 years, but we've just watched folks network and get to know each other and find their communities, their friends, and their partners, and it's a beautiful thing. To say nothing of professional networks. I went straight for the heart there. Developing distribution and accessibility solutions. This one's a little bit more nuanced, but basically we're always looking for ways that people are not having their needs met, be it food or other products. And then if that conduit to getting them what they need doesn't exist, we're trying to be that. That's put us in some pretty interesting situations, but that's for another slide. Next. All right. So here we have some work trade skill sharing. That is our summer camp group. So those are all folks who travel from all over. We've had people come from out of state, but we try to keep it about 50% locals who are on the farm for 3 days for a while at a time. That's us volunteering at Jamestown Clallam. They hosted the canoe journey this past year, and so the farm got to go out there and be canoe haulers. I don't know if any of you have tried to pick one of those up. Okay. It takes farm muscles for sure. And these are our current staff right here. This is part of the CGC, the Clallam Growers Collective that they talked about when they introduced me. So that is a volunteer network of farmers and agriculturalists who support each other and exchange tools and skills. And then here is one of the many school field trips that we've hosted. That one specifically talking about waste recovery with elementary school kids who are endlessly fascinated with compost piles. So that segues nicely into diverting waste, which is a big thing that SisterLand does. We pick up over 100,000 pounds of kitchen waste every year. And reminder, we're just a 1-acre farm. So we're processing this very, very quickly, turning it into soils, putting it back on local land. We're also, as of Earth Day last year, so this program is almost 1 year old, we are monitoring all of our plastics intake on the farm. Because a lot of people have this idea that farm businesses are all eco-friendly or are all super sustainable, and that's just not true. You have to buy a lot of plastic as a farmer. Some farms in the area rely almost entirely on plastics to grow the foods that we know and love at the farmers market. We weigh ours in and we track it season by season, quarter by quarter, to see exactly how much waste our farm is producing. And we'll be able to report those numbers to you at the end of every year. We also work with composite recycling. And that is basically trying to forge these partnerships with the local timber and lumber industries. These are things that are, the foundation of this community that we're thriving in right now. And yet they create a lot of waste and they don't have a lot of resources themselves towards sustainability. not local resources anyway. So we're trying to be that. We're trying to pick up a bunch of wood waste and use it as our carbon source and turn it back into soil. All right, so that's a new project that's also very exciting, worth an hour-long presentation. All right, we turn all of our compost by hand. We don't use any heavy machinery at SisterLand because we are a no-till farm. So we do not compact the soil with tractors. We don't even drive on our growing spaces. It's hard. This is our first day of plastics recovery and recycling. This was a partnership with WSU and Country Air to pick up jack-o'-lanterns at the end of Halloween, which usually accounts for something like 3,000 pounds of waste. And it could be so much more than that. This is a no-till demonstration garden that we built. And this is the CRTC plant, or their manufacturer space just by the airport. This is the product. This is hemlock, which historically hasn't been very well utilized by woodworkers or manufacturers. And they're trying to find new ways to use hemlock because it grows so beautifully out here. But that creates an enormous amount of waste as they're going through these experiments and testing these new products. So we're picking that waste up and turning it back into soil. All right, how are we giving what we can? If we're not quite making a living wage yet, how much do we have to give? The answer is actually, we have a lot. So we host an annual fundraiser for the food bank. It's always a success, that's in winter. We have the Dignity Project, which brings on a new or budding agriculturalist every year. They work for us for a year, and then we award them a stipend equal to their wages. So they get to walk away with everything that they earned doubled. And they get to turn that into their own business or agricultural operation. We do that because we fundraise through the nonprofit program. We have 3 classes and clinics. Last year, one of our most important clinics was we focused on women. Happy International Women's Day. We focused on women farmers and tried to get them all in one space and learn about grant writing success. So there's so much money coming out of WSDA right now, but people don't know how to apply for it. And I sat on a grant review committee for the state and saw that when men applied for agricultural grants, they always asked for 100% of the possible award. And when women asked for a grant or applied for a grant, they would, on average, ask for about a quarter of the value. So that's just one thing that I wanted to talk to people about and get farmers a little bit more comfortable asking for the max, because nobody can award you more than what you ask for, but they can award you less. Other such valuable nuggets come to a grant writing workshop anytime. All right. We also founded a tool library for the county. So we have flame weeders, we have vacuum seeders, we have all of the cool tech that you can use to get your farm operation started, and it's accessible totally free through the growers network that we founded and we host at SisterLand. Volunteerism, SisterLand crew volunteers or did volunteer for all of the below, the Port Angeles Racial Justice Collective, Jamestown Clallam Tribe and their tribal gardens, the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, the North Olympic Land Trust, and the school district and the equity team hosted by the school district. All right, so this is a community building partnership. This is with Wellies. They brought their entire crew, everybody who has worked for Wellies, to do a tour and to see how all of their paper products and their ice cream refuse is getting turned into soil. This is the Jamestown Tribal Garden. That's a work event that SisterLand hosted there. And then this is one of the wreaths that we used to raise money for the food bank last year. Beautiful wreath. I love my wreath. Thank you. All right, then we get into the little spaces in between. Meeting local needs means giving what we can. So SisterLand during the COVID pandemic was one of the first hosts of a free vaccine clinic in Jesse Webster Park. We did that with the county health office. We've also started aggregating independent literature, radical reading, with partnership with Haymarket Books, who shares the cost with us, so that we can get to young people books that they might not be able to access at the local library, especially as they come out. So we're able to get books basically on the day that they are released and get them to folks for less than the cost, about half the cost of production. We also provide gender affirming apparel. There are a lot of trans folks on the Olympic Peninsula who don't have access to gender affirming apparel. So we use what little funds that we have in that reserve to secure what they need, basically, and make sure that that's a resource that they have on the peninsula. Our food bank donations account for about 15% of every harvest at SisterLand. So we aim for 15, generally it's closer to 20 or 25% of all of our harvest gets donated to the food bank, food not bombs, or the Little Free Food Pantries. And then the annual Pride Picnic again is totally free. It's something that didn't exist before we were here. And we knew that we could make it a success. So we actually do that in partnership with B&B Lavender Farm over in Squem. And it's a riot. Here's last year's Pride Picnic. One of many photos. It's all ages. It's a really beautiful thing to see. And there's 1 day's worth of, or one day, so half of a harvest worth of food bank donations from last year. Meeting local needs and diverting waste. So I don't know if everyone's hip to the hot gossip around Washington State Legislature surrounding organics waste management, but I am. And there's something coming down the pike that will impact all of us. And it's legislation that says that you have to increase the amount of organics waste that you divert from the waste stream. And there are lots of metrics involved with that. Port Angeles, Washington flies just under the radar because of population, basically. We're just small enough in population that we don't have to take action this year. However, it is pretty inevitable that Washington State is going to ask us to start composting, especially at businesses, because those are places where a lot of waste is getting backed up and not getting processed responsibly. So what we're trying to do is create education and resources and programming so that restaurants and businesses can start onboarding their staff and getting to composting all of their organics waste. You'll hear more about this, hopefully in the news in the next month or so. Recycling recovery. So when we lost our cardboard recycling, I don't know if anyone remembers that whole, all of our bins disappeared, nobody could recycle cardboard. SisterLand brought it in and composted it all. I forget how many truckloads it was, but it was probably close to about 50 truckloads of cardboard that a 1 acre farm processed when we had nobody else picking it up. And then the finished compost distribution. So we're moving all of this food waste, all of this cardboard, the wood chips and the sawdust from lumber industry, and we're putting it back into local farms. And we do that as a nonprofit, and nobody ever has to pay for that product, which I think is pretty cool. This is kind of neat. This is what the farm looked like 2 years ago. It's almost my 2-year anniversary on the property. So there's no barn, there's no curing shed, there's no walk-in refrigeration at all. There's just the one line that we've put in for electric. So we've grown a lot in 2 years. And this is a partnership specifically with Colibri, which is a Seattle and Port Angeles based soap and detergent company that's trying to make all compostable packaging. We're testing all of their packaging in our compost to make sure that it is readily compostable in home systems and doesn't need to be industrially composted. Diverting waste and giving what we can. The WSU Gleaning Program is someone that we partner with. So SisterLand hosts gleaners, and they come and they pick all of our seconds produce and take it to the food bank, but we also glean ourselves. So we're a part of gleaning teams that go all over the county. Apples are a huge one. There are a lot of folks with apple trees who do not have the physical mobility to go out there and harvest all of those apples. So our team does. And then we drive them in trucks to food banks all over the Olympic Peninsula. Compost education online. We offer free compost education services online, an hour consulting for people who are interested in composting at home. And then the Green Wheel certification, that's our news coming up. But this is basically in partnership with the city of Port Angeles. We're going to have a certification that businesses can apply for that we will basically be the judges of. but we're going to make sure that folks are doing the best that they can to manage their organics waste. And if you succeed, if you meet a few criteria, you'll get this certification. And we're trying to make this something that basically we can create tourist brochures, we can create maps of businesses in the area that are doing their best to make these sustainable decisions. And that's something that we're managing and we're really excited about. So here we have some photos from Gleaning, but we also have our first Green Wheel certified business, which would be Wellies. They not only determine what kind of products and serveware they're going to use to make sure that it's all compostable, but they have been our longest standing business partnership that has composted all of their back of house waste. They're great. At the center of this, our principle is basically, we want to do the best possible work that we can and impact people's lives positively and hurt no one. And so that's kind of what we always go back to. Is this decision ever going to hurt somebody? I think that we do a pretty good job. I think the people that we sometimes hurt the most are ourselves, just by taking on the workload that we have. However, as a farm, this is such a huge deal. We have had 2 seasons now with nobody sent to the emergency room. It's a big deal. So hopefully this will be our 3rd year holding that record. All right. So this is our big reveal. This is our big news. Is that we are actually opening a grocery store.
Awesome.
And this will be on the intersection of Pine and 8th Street, called the Pine and 8th. You can't miss it, right? So we are trying to de-gentrify a building. So this used to be a grocery store back in the, I think, late 50s and 60s. And then it became a beauty salon first, and then a tanning salon, and then a laundromat. And then it sat empty for over 3 years, and just became a rat apartment. So we rented it for 5 years. So we've got 5 years to prove that this is going to work. And we're trying to create a very, very tiny grocery store that is powered by and worked by farmers. So this is going to be a different kind of food purchasing. You're not going to be able to get lemons in summer. You're not going to be able to get watermelons for the 4th of July. But the people who are staffing the grocery store can tell you the names of the people who grew your food, and they can tell you why maybe our supply is limited, and they can push a lot of tail on you. So these are our current partners, and we actually just started securing these partnerships in the past 2 weeks, and they are rolling in. So even since I made this presentation, there are a few more. But we've got Hidden Penny Farms, Goodness Teas, Gold Feather Coffee, Joy Farms, and Wildling Farms, who are all on board to stock this grocery store. There's also Northwest Beachworks and, of course, SisterLand, and a handful of other farmers. So we should be able to have a pretty good supply in the first year. And I suppose that's going to grow every year once we prove the concept. It will be a slightly expensive store because, like I said, we pay each other equally, and that will extend to our clerks or whoever comes on to man the store. But I think that we can argue the validity of those decisions and convince you guys that it's worth it. I hope. Right. And this is just a snapshot of the SisterLand community from last year. I love this picture because we're all so very happy, and I think I can probably end it there. I don't want to take it too long. Thank you so much, Jenson. This is just a list of ways that you can help. And it starts with a really, really important one, which is before you send us an email or give us a call, check the website.
What's the URL?
SisterLandFarms.com.